Check. Test. 2. Yeah. Hey. 2. Yeah. Hey. Test. 2. Test. 2. Two, two. Okay, mics in this room are now live and recording. Don't say anything you don't want them to hear.
these over. I don't know if we're really going to need these. Is this going to be? No, I'm just going to stick them. Hey, Lina, how are you? Good to see you. Good. Hope you had a good night's rest. Good to go. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to get started now, if you're all sitting. Thank you. I'm Jen Judson, and I'm the 115th president of the National Press Club and land warfare reporter for Defense News. We're here today for a news conference with Lina Abu Akleh to talk about the way forward for the case of her aunt Shireen, an Al Jazeera journalist who was killed while reporting on a story in the West Bank. That was more than 100 days ago, and while much has happened since then, there has been no justice for Shireen, and that is not acceptable. That tells the world that if you shoot a journalist, it can go unpunished. And if journalists don't feel protected, less will take that risk to shine light where it is critically needed. The Press Club is trying to do something about that by supporting Lina on this trip. Last night in the ballroom of the National Press Club, Lina accepted the President's Award for her aunt in what was an unforgettable moment for all in attendance or watching the live stream or on C-SPAN. The club wanted to step up and do what it can to put a focus on Shireen's case. We call on others to help as well. We're grateful for the significant congressional support Lina and her family have received. Dozens of lawmakers in Congress have called for the Justice Department to lead an investigation into the killing of this American journalist. We agree. It seems that the administration agrees, and so does Lina's family and Shireen's employer, Al Jazeera. Today we'll hear from Lina. We're going to share with you statements that have come in from members of Congress about this case, and we'll hear from an executive from Al Jazeera, and we'll take your questions. During the question portion, please raise your hand and I'll call on you. Please state your name and the news organization you work for before asking your questions, and let's keep these as questions, please, no speeches. And what we're looking for here is civility. Issues that take place in the Gaza and West Bank can be emotionally charged. We are here today because a journalist was killed as she wore a vest marked press. Until we can figure out why and how this happened in great detail, the safety of every journalist working in the area is at risk. Also, we're here because Shireen was an American, and we feel a special responsibility to see that her country accounts for her. Over the past day or so, I've gotten to know Lina a bit, but what she's doing very important, and she is a person of great courage and compassion. Please join me now in welcoming Lina Abu Akleh to the National Press Club. Thank you, Lina.
Thank you so much, Jen. I appreciate your words, and I appreciate your strong statement, especially last night. It was a very moving tribute, and I thank the National Press Club for their continuous support ever since my aunt was killed on May 11th. It's been almost 4 months now since my one and only aunt was shot and killed while reporting in Jenin, while practicing her right to press, her right to freedom of speech. And it's been almost 4 months now with no accountability and no action from the US administration. I was here in DC last month trying to go from one place to another to fight for justice, even though this is something that our family should not be doing. This is the US administration's role to take on this case and to take it seriously and hold the perpetrators accountable. We didn't have the opportunity to even grieve as a family. We couldn't mourn our dear aunt because we had to continuously call for accountability, for justice, and for the US to do its role and its obligation to protect its citizens abroad, its journalists, and most importantly, to open an investigation, a thorough, independent, transparent investigation into the murder of one of their own citizens and a journalist, and most importantly, a human being who was killed by the same army that the US funds every single year. So for us, it's been very disappointing the way the US has been handling this. It's been disappointing and frustrating that ever since we left DC until today, there hasn't been any meaningful action. We appreciate some of the light commitments that were made by the State Department when we met with the Secretary of State Antony Blinken on their efforts to continue to be transparent with our family, but that's been it. This is the time for real action. This is the time for the US to hold the Israeli army, to hold the Israeli soldier accountable for the murder of their own citizen. And frankly, it's very concerning at this point, the fact that the US is not taking any action sets a precedent that other governments have the green light to target journalists, to target US citizens without being held accountable. As Jan mentioned, last night Shireen was honored with the President's Award. And it's just very, very disappointing that the US administration doesn't even acknowledge the importance of opening an investigation. You know, Shireen's legacy is something that is exceptional. She was a voice for the silenced Palestinians. She was continuously reporting on truth, on justice. And these are some of the values that the US continues to talk about, to preach. President Biden, a few days before my aunt was killed, he gave a statement on Press Day, and he said the importance of protecting journalists, the importance of press freedom, and most importantly, how crucial it is to protect female journalists, especially in the field. Yet, he still has not taken action. He continues to ignore the importance of this case. And most importantly, he isn't upholding the values that he continues to preach. We will not relent. At the end of the day, we will continue fighting. We will not be discouraged. Our fight for justice and accountability is a long road, but we are committed with our efforts, and we appreciate all that all organizations have been doing, especially journalists who continue to write about this. It's very important that journalists continue to talk about Shireen because she was a journalist herself, and it's important that they press on the US administration to take a more serious role and to take action. Thank you, and I'm open for any questions. I think, well, we will continue assessing all our options and all avenues available to us for justice. And I think at this point, a better question would be is what is the US administration planning to do moving forward? What are their next steps? And we continue to ask for a meeting with the president. But until today, there hasn't been any definite answer. He refused to meet with us on our last trip. And at this point, it's just very, very frustrating. It's very frustrating that they aren't even being open with us with their next steps. And we will continue to pressure them, and we continue to ask journalists, organizations to also take on this important role into pressuring the administration to hold to share with them what are their next steps, and as well as the members of Congress to continue calling out for an investigation. And we urge all members who are committed to the values of human rights, press freedom, to sign on to the Justice for Shireen Act that was introduced by Representative Andre Carson, because it's important that there is an investigation, and that it's important because it sets a precedent for other future cases where the U.S. is obliged to open an investigation into their killing.
There's a good number of co-sponsors for that legislation you're talking about, right? Do you know how many have signed on for that?
I'm not sure about that, but yes, it's been dozens, and we still call on anyone who still hasn't signed onto the into the bill to go ahead and do that, because it's very, very important. She was a U.S. citizen, and the U.S. is obliged, its duty to protect citizens abroad.
I noticed you're wearing a button. I saw a lot of people last night with those as well, and there's been a lot of public art related to your aunt in just a very short time. Can you tell us a little bit about that, what you noticed?
Yeah, I mean, it's been over 100 days, and until this day, people still celebrate her legacy. People still talk about her work, her exceptional work. And we are so grateful for all that's been taking place all over the world, all the murals, the art, the exhibitions honoring her legacy and her work. And it just goes on to show what kind of a journalist she was, and the impact she's had, not just on Palestinians, but on people all around the world. So we're very grateful as a family that until this day, everyone talks about Shireen, and that gives me hope that hopefully soon we will have justice.
Any other questions? Thank you, Lina.
Thank you.
I'm going to read a few statements from members of Congress. We should note that Congress is out of session and that this is an election year, so most members are back in their districts. But I must say there were several who wanted to have their views be known here. The first is a statement from Senator Van Hollen, and he says, "For over 100 years, members of the National Press Club have stepped up to defend the freedom of press, both at home and abroad, because a free press is essential to democratic governance and to holding the powerful accountable. That work continued last night when the club gathered to honor a brave journalist dedicated to covering the daily realities of a deeply polarized and dangerous conflict and reporting the truth. In celebrating Shireen Abu Akleh's life and work, we also honor all those who came before and will come after, who put their lives on the line to be our eyes and ears in difficult corners of the world." The President's Award and the powerful words shared last night by so many champions of the press were a tribute to Ms. Abu Akleh's unflinching reporting. But we must match those words with a relentless determination to get the full truth about her shooting death and not rest until those responsible are held accountable. It's up to all of us to protect and defend a free press. That's why so many of us on Capitol Hill have called for a credible, independent, and transparent investigation into Shireen's death. I'm sorry to say that no such independent inquiry has been conducted to date, and as of today, members of Congress have not received adequate responses to the inquiries we have made to the Biden administration. But we will not allow Ms. Abu Akleh's death to be swept under the rug, and we will keep demanding answers until we get the full truth. Thank you to the leaders and members of the National Press Club for your unshakable defense of the critical role of the press and journalists like Shireen Abu Akleh, who put themselves at risk to report the truth. My next statement comes from Rep. Andre Carson. 113 days. That's how much time has passed since Shireen Abu Akleh was killed. It's the amount of time her family has been grieving and searching for answers. It's the amount of time that Israel has denied responsibility and shown a lack of reverence for her life. And it's the amount of time Shireen's family has been working to seek justice and ensure that her death was not in vain. This year, 46 journalists have been killed reporting on wars and humanitarian crises around the world. Not only do these individuals lose their lives in tragic and senseless ways, their families rarely receive closure. While some questions may never be answered fully, there is currently no legislation requiring the United States to investigate the murders of journalists killed in action while in foreign nations. That's why I'm introducing the Justice for Shireen Act. The standalone bill requires a report on Shireen's death by the Department of State and FBI in consultation with the Department of Defense and the National Director of Intelligence. This is a bare minimum of what she deserves, the truth. We need an unbiased, open, and transparent investigation so we can hold those responsible accountable. Free speech and free press make up the very foundation of our country. But if those who lose their lives shedding light on war zones and human rights violations are not given the dignity of a thorough investigation, then the press is not free and it is not protected. Today is about Shireen and our ongoing search for answers, but it's also about letting her legacy live on. We will never stop fighting for justice. And our final statement comes from Representative Omar. Freedom of press is a fundamental right. Shireen Abu Akleh's murder is a reminder of the horror the occupation inflicts and the work we as a global community must do to protect journalists from harm. Shireen should be alive to receive this Lifetime Achievement Award herself. Today, we celebrate, uplift, and acknowledge the brilliant contributions Shireen gave the world in shining a light on the horrors happening in the West Bank. She inspired millions with her courage to speak truth to power. There's no one more deserving of this incredible achievement award than her, and we should not rest until we get justice and accountability for her murder. And that concludes the statements from lawmakers, and I'll open it back up for any remaining questions before we wrap up the press conference. And Lina, you can step back up here if you'd like to answer. Bill.
I think we just should recognize that Caroline Ellert is here. And, no, I'm sorry. Amanda from Congressman McCullough's office from Minnesota. Yeah. And she wanted to be here. Her representative's also in the district, but she just wanted to be here to support.
Thank you
we
so
thank
much
her
for coming.
being here.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And also just to observe that there's bipartisanship in this approach. Both Senator Romney and Ossoff have been the leaders on this.
Yes.
Which is unusual this year and in recent years.
I know.
And it's full of meaning. Senator Van Hollen's been very involved in it, but the leaders are too bipartisan.
Yeah, and we really appreciate it. And it just goes on to show the importance of this case because, again, she was a U.S. citizen. She was a journalist who was killed while wearing a press vest, a helmet, a protective gear. And at the end of the day, we need to ensure that the U.S. is fulfilling its duty and its obligation to protect its citizens and its journalists. So we really appreciate all the support we've been getting from all representatives, senators who are fulfilling their own duty and upholding the values that they are preaching, which is which gives us hope.
All right, any other questions? All right, then we will conclude this press conference. Thank you so much, Lina.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.